Greetings, health and human enthusiasts, and welcome to the Regaining Health and Humanity podcast. I'm your trusted guide, Dr. Scott Johnson, and I'm both humbled and thrilled that you've chosen to join me on this fearless pursuit of knowledge and inspiration. My mission is to elevate your well-being naturally, arming you with evidence-based insights, revolutionary breakthroughs, and impactful health tactics. But that's not all. Together, we'll dive deep into the mysterious realms of human existence, unraveling the secrets of what makes us truly thrive. This podcast isn't just about information. It's a catalyst for change. Join me in confidently exploring potent natural solutions, cutting-edge health strategies, and igniting courageous conversations that cultivate meaningful connections and foster empathy for humankind. I'm here to empower you to unleash your extraordinary potential and lead a life jam-packed with boundless health and happiness. So get ready. Your extraordinary journey to boundless health and happiness starts now. Hello, listeners. Today we have a guest with vast experience with essential oils and herbs and a diverse background. Stephanie Webb has been an art teacher at the American School in London, the owner of a wholesale clothing manufacturing company, a researcher of sustainable and organic manufacturing practices, recognized by Vogue as a mom entrepreneur, and featured as a guest on Martha Stewart. After selling her company in 2012, she pursued education in natural healing, including herbalism and clinical aromatherapy. Currently, she is a clinical aromatherapist, aromatic medicine educator, the lead botanical formulator and botanical sourcing agent for the second largest CBD company in the world, involved in Vanilla Project in South Florida, and a consultant for several companies that manufacture drink mixes, gummies, and electrolyte powders. Welcome, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. I really appreciate you having me on, and I've been a big fan of yours for a long time.
Yeah, it's always nice to talk to somebody else who has similar passions in essential oils and also herbs. And so I'm excited to talk about our topic because I think with the time of the year, it's very relevant and it's timely. And so I hope that it will help people find relief. First, can you talk a little bit about how allergies occur in the body?
Yeah.
Particularly why some people's immune systems overreact to harmless substances like pollen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you asked me to do this particular subject. If you knew me really well and deeply, you would know that this is my personal hang up. So it's something that I've worked on, and when we tend to have an issue ourselves, we tend to go down the rabbit hole. So I feel really confident in talking about histamine issues and allergies. And basically, from what I've learned on this path is that genetics play a big part, and gut biome. Those are the two big things.
Right.
Stress, of course, is an added thing, but we sometimes are more predisposed to having allergic reactions. People that have, let's say, like the MTHFR gene mutation, some of us, I have that, are, it reduces our ability to break down histamines in the body. So gut biome, that's a huge thing,
Right.
That's basically, that's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we need different enzymes to break down histamines. So the DAO enzyme, and there's probiotics that really do help support our body's ability to break down histamine reactions. So the way I see it from my perspective is our body can get overloaded. So we have a reaction. So, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and I like where you say overloaded because histamine in itself actually serves important functions within the body.
Yeah,
It's when it becomes excess because our body has an inability to metabolize it, or if we're making too much of it for some reason that it becomes problematic. What do
exactly.
you find are the most common triggers of seasonal allergies, and why are certain times of the year do they tend to exacerbate these symptoms?
Yeah, so obviously when things are blooming,
Hmm.
um, and what I've found for myself personally is tree pollen and ragweed. Those are my two weaknesses. Like when those are blooming, I, beef up on the things that I know that'll help my body process them. So, when plants are blooming, flowers, pollen in the air, pine pollen, when we see that pine pollen, that's the one that actually doesn't affect me. It probably affects other people, but here in the South, we get these big clouds of yellow dust, um, but I do find with the pine pollen, it's some of these other early blooming trees that affect me personally. So, what I like to do, because I like to be outside a lot. And so I know what to do to prevent myself from having a overreaction. Um, and a lot of times, it can be simple things like making sure I'm hydrated so I can, um, you know, process these histamines out of my body effectively,
Hmm.
making sure that I shower off and I do nasal rinses and all of those things. What else do I do? When I walk outside, I walk a lot, I run a lot. I do a lot of homeopathics and they seem
Hmm.
to be really effective for me. And peppermints, like actual mints. I use those a lot because they help my, um, you know, bronchial, I guess, open up their bronchodilators. So
Right.
yeah.
You mentioned earlier the gut microbiome, and I
Hmm.
really agree that allergies, that's one of the biggest focuses or things that need attention when people are experiencing really any type of allergies. So can you explain a little bit further about the connection between with gut health and allergies?
Yes. So basically, we need a healthy gut biome to be able to break down histamines. So some of us with this gene mutations and things, we have a hard time producing that DAO enzyme.
Hmm.
And so certain foods increase this enzyme. They also can, like grass-fed beef and eggs and stuff can naturally help your body produce that enzyme. So when I talk about gut health and, allergies and things like that, you really need to make sure that either you take a probiotic that's specific for allergies, um, as well as if you need a DAO enzyme, that's something that should be, looked into, or just eating foods that are low in histamine can help too. So,
Hmm.
foods that are high in histamine, you want to stay away from. So that's aged foods like, fermented foods that are all healthy for the general public,
Hmm.
but aged cheese, wine, aged meats, things like that are really high in histamines. Tomatoes, obviously, are high in histamine as well. And then I also personally, I like to support my gallbladder with bitters and increasing the bile flow so that my gallbladder and liver function and all of that is doing what it needs to be doing so that my gut biome is going to be happy.
What about essential oils? What do you find are the most effective essential oils for allergies, and what are their mechanisms of action? How are they helping the body with allergies?
Yeah. So, of course, I love my essential oils. I can't imagine life without them. Right?
Hmm.
Once you're involved in this arena, you realize that they're everything. They're the most potent plant medicine. So, um, antihistamines. They're my two favorite essential oils that are very high in antihistamines are lavender and Roman chamomile. And so those are the ones that I tend to lean on, um, whether it's diffusing or rubbing a little bit under my nose, putting it on my chest before I go outside, something like that. Peppermint as well. I do that even just by, taking the mints or, using peppermint on my chest as well. I do that often. I don't necessarily use them in a nasal rinse. I know we're going to get to that later, but I tend to use them just topically.
Okay.
And actually, internally, what am I saying? I do them internally as well. I mean, I'm just thinking other routes, but internally, of course, I take capsules of oils all the time, and especially when I'm feeling the symptoms, I tend to use more chamomile and peppermint in a capsule. That's what my go-to would be, and I dilute it and take it internally. And then topically and diffusion. Those are the ways that I use it in my household.
Yeah, I like the ones that you're mentioning. One of the most common things that I see people using that they find effective is a combination of lavender, peppermint, and lemon. That's really
Yeah.
common. But I've, like you, found chamomile to be very beneficial
Mm-hmm.
because of its research showing that it's a mast cell stabilizer. And so mast cells are one of the cells in the body, along with basophils, that contain and release histamine granules. And so when these cells degranulate, that's when they release all these chemicals that trigger these allergic reactions. And so by helping to stabilize that and not have them degranulate so often, you can release or reduce the amount of histamine in the body. My
Yeah.
personal opinion is essential oils actually work very well, but they can work very well when they're combined with herbs and nutraceuticals. I have some personal favorites when it comes to supporting individuals with seasonal allergies, but what are your favorite supplements to use for seasonal allergies?
Yeah. So I like to use nettles are my number one. So I grow my own nettles, and in the past, I mean, we dry them, we put them, they're a food type herb. So, um, we can cook them on the stovetop like spinach, or we tend to be a little bit, I'm going to say, lazier with it, and I dry them and then I sprinkle it on whatever we're eating. It goes into meatballs, it goes into whatever we're
Mm-hmm.
eating. I use
Right.
it in the kitchen a lot. But you can also buy supplements that are just stinging nettles. You can buy those. Quercetin is another big one that we use
Mm-hmm.
often. Vitamin C is a really big one as well. And what else do we use? We use black cumin seed. That tends
Okay.
to be good for allergies as well. I actually read a recent study about people that put black cumin oil into their nostrils to reduce allergic rhinitis, and
Hmm.
it was effective. So I thought, oh, that's kind of neat. I hadn't heard that before. So, um, and mullein is a good one for the lungs. That we tend to use a little more for, lung issues like asthma and things like that. Yeah, so I think those are the top ones would be in our household are nettles, vitamin C, and quercetin.
Yeah, those are a lot of the same ones that I tend to see to be effective, along with bromelain and N-acetylcysteine is another one that I've
Oh
seen,
yeah,
which
yep.
was kind of challenging there for a while to get because the
Yeah,
FDA wanted to consider it a drug because it is actually used as a drug
it is.
intravenously, but I'm
Yeah,
glad that we're still have access to that
I
because
agree.
N-acetylcysteine has so many benefits.
It does. It's funny you mentioned that because just last night when they were going through that scare of can we get it or not, we kind of stockpiled it,
Hmm.
and we just opened up our last bottle of our
Yeah.
of our 2 year stockpile. So
Yep.
we just had this conversation about the NAC last night. So
How about nasal rinses? Have you found them beneficial, and do you use essential oils in nasal rinses, or do you just focus on salts, or what do you put in your nasal rinses?
So yeah, nasal rinses I think are important, especially if you really do suffer a lot and you're outside a lot. People that work outside and they have to function outside or they enjoy the outdoors like I do. I think it's important to wash the pollen out of your hair, out of your nose, shower off, all of that. So I don't personally use essential oils in my nasal rinses for allergies. I have used them and they've been so effective for sinus infections. So we would use, like tea tree or something like that for a sinus infection, but not for allergies. And I'm sure for no reason really, I think it would be really good. I would probably go back to my chamomile and put a little bit, in my rinse and try that. But it's not something I do personally often.
And so when you do your nasal rinses, are you just using a fine salt? I've also, personally, I've seen xylitol be actually effective as a nasal rinse. So what are you putting in those rinses?
Yeah, just the fine salt.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
How long would somebody expect to use essential oils or supplements before seeing results?
I mean, I've seen all of these things work immediately.
Hmm.
Everything from homeopathics to essential oils to as long as it takes for a nutraceutical to be absorbed, that's how long it takes. Or, an essential oil works pretty quickly when used
Hmm.
topically as well. If you're working on your microbiome in your gut and gut health, that's going to take a couple of weeks, in my opinion. It's going to take a little bit of time. So if that's something that you feel like is struggling, I would go ahead and start doing it now before allergy season gets really full rolling, so that you can have that. It takes a little bit of time for your body to heal your gut. So, but as far as, the immediate effects of essential oils and herbs, those are immediate. Those are pretty fast.
What are some practical tips or recipes for incorporating essential oils and herbs into daily routines to effectively manage these seasonal allergies people experience?
So I think, just being on top of things, diffusing, and the hard thing is I'm in North Carolina, and so when we hit this time of year, I mean, we're right now, some days are in the 40s, but some days are in the 70s. So we have really beautiful weather sometimes, and it's so nice to open your windows. And that's the challenge, is to have the windows open, but then everybody's sneezing, So I think, just having the house closed and diffusing and making sure that everybody's, using their oils and their herbs to combat the pollen is probably the best thing to do.
Can you share with us an experience that's a personal experience with using essential oils and herbs to support a client with seasonal allergies?
Yeah. So, um, basically, I think it goes back to I have helped a lot of clients with allergies, and it can be anything from seasonal allergies to food allergies. But I have been by far my own best case study, to tell you the truth. So,
Yeah.
you know, I went, you tend to go down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper when you're trying to fix yourself. So, um, I think for me, I was young and diagnosed with asthma, and then I grew out of it, and it came back actually when I went to Thailand in my youth. So 30
Mm.
years ago, um, I had some pretty severe allergic reactions, and I actually probably would correlate it to some other, probably, to tell you the truth, probably taking vaccines before I traveled, and my body overreacted to some things. And since then, it's been kind of an onward struggle with myself. So, I think I manage it, and I manage it beautifully, to tell you the truth, without having to go down the allopathic road. And so I'm somebody that's come from the other side of, hey, you can help yourself and you can take care of these things as long as you understand the mechanisms of your body and you know what your triggers are, or like I think I had told you this in the past, that I don't really need a DAO enzyme all the time, but if I go out to eat and I don't know what oils they're cooking in, or if they've got tomato powder on something, and I could react to something, so I take a DAO enzyme before I go out to eat. So, for myself, I basically have a predisposition to having allergic responses, and I find that limiting, stress issues is a big one for those of us that react. So keeping your stress level low, making sure that your gut biome is healthy and supported, and you're doing all of the things that you need to be doing to do that, to keep your body working well. And it tends to be a mix of, I personally use all of the things. I use homeopathics, I use enzymes, I use bitters, I use herbs, and I use oils. So, and it really depends on the situation. But oils are, of course, used for they're a little more for acute issues and, as far as the allergic things go, in my opinion. So for, long term, it always is gut health.
Yeah, for sure. For those of you listeners who maybe are wondering, this DAO enzyme that we keep talking about, that's diamine oxidase, which is shortened as DAO. It's an enzyme that the body naturally produces, and its primary job is to break down or metabolize histamines that are produced in the body. And so when it does its job effectively and there's not excess histamine produced, then you can generally handle that histamine without having those types of allergic reactions. You've mentioned a couple of times homeopathics, and so I just want to briefly touch on that because I think that's something that's overlooked quite frequently because it can be a very complicated subject. If you look at the books that it requires in order to dial down to a single constitutional remedy or a single remedy in classical homeopathy, that can be really challenging and overwhelming to just a lay person. But sometimes it helps us if we know what others have used and found effective. And so do you use a single homeopathic remedy or a combination? And if so, what are these including? What kind of homeopathics?
Yeah, the one, and I basically have, I don't know that much about them, to tell you the truth. I'm just being honest. Like, I go into my health food market and it says allergy relief and I get it and it works,
Okay.
So I think the one that I use most often is called histamine hydrochlorium or something.
Okay.
Do you know, you might be more familiar with it, but all of these stores like Whole Foods and your natural, natural type stores, they do have good reference guides in there. So it's not something I'm really versed on, but it is something that I lay on and rely on, and it works really beautifully,
Yeah, and so I think that's where most lay people land is it's instead of focusing on classical homeopathy and looking for that one single remedy, then getting something that is specific to allergies that has a combination of the most commonly used and most likely effective homeopathics is great. So what are some of the side effects people should be aware of in using over-the-counter remedies for seasonal allergies?
Yeah, so obviously taking some antihistamines affect your sleep, and they either can make you really tired or they can make you really wired, and they can give you, the jitters. That's something that's really common with taking antihistamines that are over the counter. They can increase your heart rate. So people that have heart arrhythmias and things like that, it can be a danger to them. They can also, from what I've learned a little bit about it, is they can deplete your body of some key nutrients. And so that's something when somebody takes antihistamines on a daily basis, it's something to be aware of. And, back when I was pregnant and having kids, I was taking an over-the-counter antihistamine. And now looking back 20 years later, I'm like, gosh, that's why I did not have my milk coming in, and it was difficult. And it was because those antihistamines were drying me out. And, I can look back and realize, and maybe help somebody in the future, help somebody else by telling you, if you're breastfeeding, try to stay away from these over-the-counter antihistamines. But sometimes when our hormones are in flux and we're already predisposed to it, or we have babies in the springtime, like you really should try to lean in onto some of these natural remedies so you don't affect your body's natural functions. So when these antihistamines can be drying to your body, that can affect also constipation, all of these things. So you might be able to elaborate on that, but that's my experience in it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that these drugs are over-the-counter drugs that you can purchase most of your stores will have these, even grocery stores will have them, but that they tend to stop something from happening in the body. That your body is naturally designed with multiple systems and pathways and mechanisms to maintain health, and it activates these systems when it perceives a threat. And allergies are a perceived threat, and so it activates these systems of histamine release. And if you just simply are using an over-the-counter remedy that's going to stop that activity, then your body has to go deeper into a deeper corrective action because it hasn't finished that correction. It's trying to correct something, and we just stopped it from doing so. And so now it's going to go deeper and usually get worse. And so I like using these natural options instead, because instead of really stopping these activities, they're trying to help support the body in completing the corrective action, as well as they are removing roadblocks that are preventing these systems and mechanisms and pathways from working optimally. So at least that's just been my experience with natural remedies.
Yeah, I would agree. They're a lot safer, and they work beautifully. So, I'm somebody that is, like I said, come from the other side of using both. And I live now completely, in tune to my body and understanding the mechanisms and knowing how to take care of them. So it's accessible, and it's something that can be done.
Yeah, well, Stephanie, thank you for taking some time to discuss this topic with us. Like I said, I think it's an important topic. It's something that it seems to be more and more people are experiencing seasonal allergies and looking for a way to find relief. And so I'm glad that we've been able to provide maybe some ideas and some things that they could discuss further with their own health professional, or maybe find a book and read additional information and find out how to use these effectively and find the relief they're searching for. So thank you for being on today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for investing your precious time with us today. I trust you've uncovered valuable insights to elevate your health and enhance your quality of life. If you're hungry for more evidence-based wisdom to transform your well-being, I invite you to check out my 20-plus books, all waiting to be explored on my website, authorscott.com. Don't miss out on the chance to supercharge your knowledge. Please share, like, and subscribe to be part of the movement revolutionizing lives. In a world drowning in noise and endless information, your share can be the beacon that guides others to a better life. Together, let's make a difference by amplifying the life-changing knowledge you've gained today. Until next time, here's to your journey to boundless health and unbridled happiness.